Well, good afternoon and welcome to Payentry's webinar on ACA in 2021. This is always a topic I like to address this time of year because we need to be getting our files in order and the data correct so that it does occur as it should. My name is Kathy Graham. I probably have talked to many of you, but I'm head of the HR services area and by default ended up with the ACA project each year. So it is one of my favorite topics. I think it's fascinating and everybody else hates it. So I think that's why I got it assigned to me. Okay, let's talk about some of the things that we are going to cover today. I'm going to cover how you do this in Payentry, but I also want to get started and let you know a few things about ACA that are important. One are the terms. Um, Why is using the correct codes important? We're going to go over the codes here. There are some new codes in 2021. We are not going to cover those today because they deal only with HRA, the new kind of HRA plans. And if any of you in this group have a new HRA individual HRA plan, then I will talk you through that on a separate basis one-on-one. And we're going to talk about also where to put the codes on the form or where they go if you're doing your own. Normally we do them for you. We're going to talk about the codes for Part 2, line 14, the codes for Part 2, line 16, and then how to ACA and Payentry. That's the piece I think a lot of you would like to know. And then there will be a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions as we go through this today, go ahead and write them down in your question in the questions box on your screen, and then we'll deal with them at the end. Okay, let's talk about the terms. First of all, you need to know how to speak ACA. First of all, you need to know what a limited non-assessment period is, what a qualifying offer is. There's lots of confusion about those two things. We're going to talk about briefly what minimum value coverage is and also what minimum essential coverage is. We're also going to spend some time on the safe harbors for affordability, which are critical on your forms. There are 3 of them. One is the federal poverty level, then you have rate of pay, and the W-2. We're going to talk about each one of those. But let's start out by talking about the limited non-assessment period. What in the world is that? It is actually the waiting period that you assign to all of your new hires before they can enroll in your health plan. Under ACA, this time frame cannot be more than 90 days. It can't be the first of the month following 90 days. It can't be any longer than 90 days. So do remember that. It's a violation of the law. Let's talk about a qualifying offer. There's so much confusion about this, and I hopefully can take away some of that today. But a qualifying offer is an offer of coverage that satisfies all of the following criteria. The first of all, you have to be offering minimum essential coverage that provides minimum value. Okay, you have to be able to have an ACA qualified plan, basically. The second thing is that the employee cost for the lowest cost plan for employee-only coverage. So the deduction for, let me just restate that. The deduction for employee-only coverage for each month does not exceed, this year, 9.83% of the single federal poverty level, which is $12,760 divided by 12. That amount is 104.53. So bottom line, if your health plan on a monthly basis costs any employee more than $104.53 a month, regardless of what kind of coverage they elect, some people elect family coverage. This doesn't care about that. It's just looking at what is the lowest deduction that you have for health insurance for employees. And that's what it's honing in on. This is a critical piece of this qualifying offer. And then you have to also make this minimum essential coverage offering to the spouse and dependents. But I think the key piece of this, and the piece I want you to walk away with remembering today, is that if your coverage for employee only is more than $104.53, you cannot check that block on the form that says you're making a qualifying offer. And we're going to go over that. And that's not a bad thing, because there are two other ways to offer it. So don't freak out, think that's a bad thing. It's not. It's the easy, it's like your get out of jail free card. It's the easy way to do things. Okay, minimum value coverage applies to any healthcare plan that covers at least 60% of the total allowed cost of benefits provided under the plan. This is an actuarial number. It doesn't mean that your coverage pays for 60% of everything. It just means that overall, everything that's paid under the plan ends up being 60% or more. It does not directly relate to a percentage that is paid by your plan for an employee. It is an actuarial value that your insurance broker can tell you if whether or not you have a minimum value plan. Minimum essential coverage is basically a plan that includes 10 essential health benefits, and they're listed here. I'm not going to go over each one of them, but the plans that are being sold by insurance companies and by the marketplace are usually minimum essential coverage plans. On the marketplace, yes, they are. But make sure that if you're looking at your health insurance, it does have things like emergency service coverage, hospitalization, prescription drugs. There are pregnancy and newborn care. We think of those as just being standard benefits, but there are plans out there that are skinny plans, we call them, and they don't have some of these. So that would not be minimum essential coverage. If you're confused about whether or not you have minimum essential coverage, ask the person, the broker that sold it to you. They will know. So let's talk a little bit about the safe harbors, because your plan, in addition to having that minimum essential coverage and minimum value needs to be affordable. If it's not affordable, then it's not compliant. So we're going to talk first of all about the fact that you must use one of the following methods to determine whether or not your plan is affordable. We talked a little bit about the federal poverty level safe harbor. We're going to talk about that one again. There is also one called the rate of pay affordability safe harbor, and then there's a W-2 safe harbor. So let's look at each one of these. First of all, the federal poverty level safe harbor is just what I mentioned before. The employee's deduction, or their share of employee-only premium for the lowest cost plan you have. You know, some companies do offer more than one plan, a base and a buy-up. So looking at your base plan, does that plan cost more than $104.53 if an employee wants employee-only coverage? It does not matter what they sign up for. The IRS is looking at what you would charge someone for employee-only coverage on a monthly basis. So if your premium on a monthly basis for an employee would be less than or equal to $104.53, you can claim to use this safe harbor. And this would be a qualifying harbor. It's not qualifying harbor, a qualifying offer. The next one we're going to look at is the rate of pay safe harbor. This is where the employee's share of, and we're always looking at the employee only monthly premium, but if their share of that monthly premium for your lowest cost plan is under 9.83% of their rate of pay, and that means their hourly rate or their annual rate. If it's less than or equal to 9.83%, it would be considered affordable under the rate of pay. So in order to get that, you would take the hourly rate times 130 hours, and that's what a month is supposed to be under ACA. And then multiply that times 9.83%. That will tell you what your lowest premium can be or should be. Look at the lowest paid person in your company, and that will tell you if your plan is affordable. You don't need to go through and do the calculation on everyone. Just look at the lowest person or the lowest rate of pay in your company, and that will tell you if your plan is affordable. Kind of along the same train of thought, using the W-2 to determine affordability, the employee's share of the employee-only premium for your lowest cost plan is less than 9.83% of their W-2 wages for the prior calendar year. This is much more beneficial for companies to use this because you just using your rate of pay doesn't calculate in past overtime or bonuses or anything like that. So on the W-2 wages for the prior calendar year, they probably will have a larger number. So looking at this, taking the lowest paid person in your company and running that calculation of 9.83%, if that is greater than your employee premium, I'm sorry, if your premium is more than 9.83% of their W-2 wages, then it's not affordable. And you have to either calculate your plan as not affordable or and face some penalties or correct it. Sometimes when companies only have one plan, the way to solve this is to add a lower cost plan, even if most of the people sign up for it for the more expensive plan, or no one signs up for the lowest cost plan. At least you're offering it, and that is your that's your way out of this dilemma. So offer a cheaper plan alongside your other plan. Okay, so why are correct ACA codes important? I have helped several companies this year that have gotten penalty letters, and they're not cheap. I mean, they have lots of penalties and fees, and a lot of times it's easy to get out of them, but you have to have the correct codes. The IRS judges your compliance using these codes, and so when they look at your codes and they don't match, or they look like they're wrong, well, the incorrect codes cause confusion and penalties, and they cause penalty letters. So you don't want to have to deal with the penalty letter because they do require a quick turnaround, and it does require that you stop everything you're doing and work on that and respond to why you're appearing to be non-compliant. Okay, let's take a look at Form 1095-C. This is the one, you get this electronically from us, and this is what your employees get. But that form has a couple of lines on it that are critical. If we do your ACA for you, then we will complete these and file electronically for you. But on line 14, you have to list what type of, if any, health plan was offered, or did you offer a health plan? This is where you use the one codes. There are two sets of codes in this filing process. There are one codes and two codes, and we're going to go into each one of those. But this calendar comes up at when you're calculating ACA, and every box has to be filled unless you have the all 12 months box filled. And then if it's the same across the board, you can put in all 12 months. So this line 14 is very important because it tells the IRS whether or not you offered the person coverage. And if you didn't, then we go to line 16, and that says what choice was made by the employee. This is where you use the two codes. And that's important because it will tell them whether or not the person refused your coverage or if they were not eligible for your coverage. Again, here, all the months must be populated. This next slide we're going to skip over because this is for HRA use only. If you have a health reimbursement account as your health plan. But I just wanted to point out that there is now a line 17 that wasn't there a couple of years ago. You do not have to fill that out if you are not filing an HRA plan. Let's look at the codes, okay? First of all, 1A. And you have a copy of this presentation as a handout on your screen that you can download and keep as a reference point. But 1A is for a qualifying offer. This is used if you offer your coverage and it's compliant, and you offer it to the employee, spouse, and dependent children, and this contribution is equal to or less than $104.53 a month in 2021. If you have been using 1A and you haven't been paying attention to that, make sure you do it this year, because that's one of the penalties they will fine you for is if you're using the wrong code here. You're claiming to use a safe harbor that is not a reality for you. Okay, 1B. This code's offered if you have a compliant plan, but you don't offer coverage to the spouse and dependent children. That makes you non-compliant because you are supposed to offer to the dependent children. You don't have to offer coverage to a spouse under the law. 1C is where a compliant plan was offered to the employee and dependent children, but not to the spouse, which is fine. And 1D is you have a plan that was offered to the employee and spouse, but not to the dependent children. This code would be used very rarely because you are not compliant with ACA if you're not offering it to the children. 1E is the most frequently used code, and this is probably the one you would use. It means that your employees are offered compliant coverage, and they're getting at least minimum essential coverage to the spouse and dependent children. So that's the most commonly used code. 1F is if you're offering a plan that provides the minimum essential coverage, but not minimum value to the employee, spouse, and dependents. And this would be a plan that is valued at less than a bronze plan. Now, when you go out and shop for insurance, whether it's through a broker or online, you're going to see a bronze, a silver, a gold, and a platinum plan. If it doesn't rank, if it ranks under a bronze plan, then it's not compliant. 1G is for self-insured plans that offer who offer coverage to someone who's not full-time for any month of the calendar year. That could be part-time employees, it could be COBRA participants, or it could be a non-employee. But it is only for self-insured plans. 1H, still on the 1 codes, this is used for any month in which the employee did not work for you or is in a waiting period. So this one is used a lot because that full calendar has to be completed. Let's just say someone came to work for you in April. Well, on that calendar, January, February, and March cannot be blank. So you would have to put 1H if the person was not employed by you during that time or they were in a waiting period. 1I is not used, it's being reserved. And 1J is used very rarely. It's only used when a company allows some employees to enroll their spouses, but not others, and it's not offered to any dependent children. So it's way out of compliance. And then 1K is only used when the company allows employees to add spouses unless they're a working spouse and can get coverage somewhere else. Dependent children are offered coverage under this scenario. So in today's world, a lot of companies are doing this. You have to, if you're a spouse of an employee, you have to prove you don't have coverage somewhere else or couldn't get it somewhere else from your company before you can enroll in the plan. So that's becoming more common. Okay, let's look at the 2 codes. Those go on line 16, and this is what happens when you offer somebody coverage. What do they do? Well, 2A is used if the employee was not employed on any day of the calendar month. You will see 1H on the top line and 2A for someone who was not working for you, and it says that they were not employed on any day of the calendar month. So that's a very commonly used code. 2B is used if the employee is not full-time for the full month. So if the employee employee terminates anytime during the calendar month where coverage is not extended through the end of the month, their last month of coverage would have them labeled as 2B, even though they may have been enrolled in the partial month. You would also use this if the person is part-time and then goes to full-time. Because at part-time, they're not eligible. 2C is anyone who enrolls in the plan every day of the calendar month. And this is the most commonly used 2 code. So once someone comes out of their waiting period and they elect coverage, normally you'll see the codes 1E, 2C. 2D is used when a person is in their limited non-assessment period, which is their waiting period. This code is used very frequently also. And then 2E is used for multi-employer plans, which are union plans normally. So not a lot of you won't be using that code. 2F is the code used if the employer is using the W-2 affordability safe harbor and an eligible employee is offered coverage and waives it. So if someone in your company is offered coverage and you're using the W-2 safe harbor, then you would use 2F to say, I offered this person coverage and they turned it down. In the past, a lot of people have left that blank. And if you do leave it blank, that's not a violation. You can certainly leave it blank, but if the IRS comes back and wants to know why this person doesn't have coverage, and if they're getting a subsidy on the marketplace, then you'll have to answer to the IRS. And I think it's better to put something in here and not have to answer to the IRS. 2G is the code used if the employer is using the federal poverty level safe harbor and the employee is offered and waives coverage. So if you're using that first one, the federal poverty level, this is the code you would use to show that they did not take your coverage. And if the employer is using the rate of pay safe harbor and the employee waives coverage, this code is used. So 2H is used for the rate of pay safe harbor. 2I is not applicable in 2020. So that's a brief look at the codes. There are other codes in ACA that go past 2I and the other K that we ended up on the 1K, but those are for HRA plans, and this is an individually qualified HRA. So if you have one of those that you use as a health plan offering, please contact me and we'll do a one-on-one on those codes. All right, I'm going to take a drink of water, and we're going to start on, all right, how do you enter this information into Payentry? Number one, and you should do that as people are hired. We're right in the middle of the year. Now's a good time if you need to look back at 2021, look at the codes that you have, and make sure everyone has the right code. First of all, you go to your dashboard, to the Employee Setup tab. We're going to look at the Employee Changes tab and Reporting. All right, so we're not going to talk about how to set ACA up for the company. If your company is not set up on ACA, please let me know. I have a questionnaire that you need to fill out for me, and I will set it up for you so that you don't have to do. But to set your employees up correctly, when you hire someone, go to the Benefits tab. Once you go to the Benefits tab, you will see some drop-down menus or some other tabs that you can click. The first tab and the second tab are the only two that you need to worry about. The first one is ACA Status. If you click on that and click on this button, Add New ACA Status, it will bring up a screen that looks like this. You would choose a start date, which would be that person's hire date. You do not, and I want to make sure I make a point of this. If you have an employee that's part-time, you can set them up here, and that's as far as you have to go because you don't need to put in offers of coverage and all that other stuff for part-time people. This is for full-time people who are eligible for health insurance. Unless your part-time people are eligible, but it doesn't matter because the IRS only cares about your full-time people. All right, you would put their hire date in. If they were hired prior to, and you're playing catch up right now, entering all this data, but they were hired prior to 2015, do not put that date in there because the system knows that ACA didn't start until 2015, and it will create an error if you put in a date that's prior to 2015. So you can start this 1/1/2021 if that's when you need to start reporting. You can use that date. Then you choose an end date here. And if this person is just being set up, you can set it to 12/31/2100. That's a default in the system. It will allow you later on, I'll show you, you can make changes to that as you go along. But you're saying that right now this person is hired in this status, and they will be until you change it again. All right, let's just look at that drop down. The drop down list that will come up will give you these options. You get full-time, more than 30 hours a week, even if your designation for full-time at your company is 40 hours a week, that doesn't matter. The ACA says that if you have people who work more than 30 hours on a regular basis, then they are entitled to health insurance. Part-time, according to ACA, is an individual that works on average less than 30 hours a week. And there are two other drop downs here. And one is unknown, ACA status is not set, and one is excluded from large employer determination. If at all possible, do not use either one of those because when you get ready to file, it can cause errors. The person who has an unknown status does not receive a 1095-C. And when you hire someone, I mean, from an HR standpoint, I know if I'm going to work that person full-time or part-time. So it might be for a short time. It might be for, a long time. But I'm going to start them out working a certain number of hours. And you need to put either full-time or part-time in there. Then the next thing you can do is if that person works variable hours, they're part-time, but they work, or they're full-time and they work variable hours, or they're seasonal. You only hired them for the Christmas rush. Use one of those to show that those hours may vary, even if they're full-time or part-time. Here you can check that the person is in a limited non-assessment period, but be very careful. I find when I'm auditing files, people who are keying this data forget to go back after the limited non-assessment period and uncheck that box. And that will cause a person not to get a 1095-C. Okay, so that the first two are the ones that are used primarily. The next two are rarely used, and if you do use the limited non-assessment period box for the waiting period, make sure that you go back and uncheck it when that waiting period is over. Here's where we set up the next tab. So the first one was ACA Setup. This is, I'm sorry, ACA Status. This one is ACA Coverage. You are clicking on that ACA Coverage drop-down tab, and this person already has information in here, but let's just say that we're looking at the top one. When they were hired, they were offered coverage. They put this information in, but you're going to click on Add New Coverage. And to change anything that's in here that you want to change, let's just say that this person now has gone to part-time and is not eligible for health insurance anymore, you would click on the View Edit button to your right, and that will pull up another menu that will allow you to make a change there. One thing to remember on this chart, the dates must butt up to each other. They must be consecutive. So if you stop one, let's just say this one went from 1/1/2020 to 11/15/2020, and then you start over again with 12/1, you're going to get an error message when you try to run your reports. Okay, to add new coverage, which is what you're going to be doing for a new hire. You add the start and end dates of coverage. Remember, I said you can date it out to 2100 if you want to, because you can always go back and add another line, changes this end date, and starts a new one. You stack them based on the dates. You're going to select an offer of coverage from the drop-down, and I'm going to go switch over to this screen and show you that drop-down will offer you these codes. It will offer you all the 1 codes that you need. So remember, qualifying offer is the federal poverty level offer. If you're offering it to the employee only and not their spouse and children, it's 1B, 1C if you're offering it to the employee and dependent children, etc. 1E, remember, is the one that's used the most. And 1H, again, is used a lot if no coverage was offered. And that could be because they're part-time or they're, or not part-time, but they didn't work for you. Do not, on this ACA tab, to show what kind of coverage was offered, don't fill that out for part-time people. It's not required, and it's just a lot of extra work for you. So when you get to the employee ACA coverage, don't fill this out for part-timers. It is not required. All right. So once we set the offer of coverage to one of those 1 codes, you're going to drop down to employee share, and you want to click on the 0 and put in the amount of the deduction that that person pays on a monthly basis for employee only coverage. So if you've decided what your employee only coverage premium is, this will be the same for every single one of your employees, because even though they elect other coverage, this is the only number that the IRS cares about, is what you would charge that person just for employee coverage. Then under employer relief, there's a drop down there. And employer relief is where the 2 codes go. Let's go over here and show you that these are the 2 codes. And from 2A is not employed that month 2B could be not full-time, which means they were part-time during the month. 2C is most commonly used because that's the employee enrolled in coverage. 2D is if they're in that waiting period. Could be 30, 60, 90 days. And also down here, 2F, 2G, and 2H. This is determined by which safe harbor you're using. If you need help calculating this, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you. But you need to look at the lowest for W-2 and rate of pay. You look at the lowest paid person and run that percent against the lowest paid person's either W-2 earnings or rate of pay. That number and that amount of a premium changes every year. It's set annually. And so is the federal poverty level set annually for this purpose. Okay, so the last thing on here is enrolled in self-insurance plan. If you do not have a self-insured plan, you will, this is drop down goes to yes or no. You are always going to put no in here, always no. But if you are in a self-insured plan, you would always click yes. So it depends on the type of plan that you have. Okay, to change information under, remember this ACA Coverage tab, you are going to click on View Edit. Once you do that, you'll have this screen come up and it will ask you to enter some information. The start date and end date of the coverage. This one is already filled in, but it has that same drop down that I showed you the list of. If you want to change that and you're now offering one that is a qualifying offer, 1A, you can change that. But this is the type of coverage you've offered. As we went ahead before, the employee's share will always be the same number in everyone's screen. Maybe your premiums changed this year and you want to change this. Okay, so that would be a place to change it. And let's just say you're in open enrollment period and this person had enrolled in coverage before on January of 2019, but now they've dropped their coverage. So you're going to need to enter a different code here from that drop-down list. Here, remember, is just the maybe you switch from an insured plan to a self-insured plan. Then you need to change that from no to yes. So whatever you enter in here would show up, and I don't have a drop down on this, but if you click on this little arrow beside the year, you can pull up any year in the past that you have filed coverage or filed these reports, and it will show you the information for that person. But when you are working in 2021, you're going to want this to be on 2021, and I'm sorry it still says 2020, but for 2021, you have a chart here of the person's response, 1E, all the way across the board because you offered them coverage. You have the amount, and if it changed mid-year, it will show up on here. And then what relief do you have? Well, this person happened to enroll in the plan, and they stayed in the plan the whole year, so you're fine. And you are not self-insured. So that's the way it has to be completed for the whole year. Okay, once you have all your data in, there is a report that you can run under Company Reports, and it's called ACA Data and 1095C Review. If you go there and run that, it will show you what your 1095Cs will look like by person. It will also show on here if there is an error. And those are the ones you want to focus on. Something's not right for them to run with an error. That means that they will not get a 1095C, and you need to go in and correct the information to make sure that the error goes away. That's where I come into play. You are welcome. If you are a Payentry client, you are welcome to call me anytime, shoot me an email, and I'm there to help you work through your problems during this ACA season. I hope a lot of you get started early so that it doesn't all happen in December. December's not a lot of fun for me because that's everyone waits till the last minute. But we're starting to do some training and some assistance earlier in the year this year so that maybe people will get ahead of the game and not be in a crunch at year end when everything else in your office is also at year end and you're trying to do 20 different things that are due 12/31. So this is a thing that you can get into and fix now so that it's not a problem at year end. Okay, I'm going to see if there are any questions here. Let me just, all right, and go up here. And if there are some specific questions to a company, I will probably get back to you after this, but let's say, so first question, if an employee leaves mid-month, their last month employed would be 2B. Or should the last month remain whatever they were throughout their employment? It would be 2B is correct because they did not have coverage the entire month. So you would use let's just say you're using 1E as your offer and 2B because they weren't there the whole month. Another question, will the codes 2F, G, and H be set to automatically update on the 1095C, or do they still need to be manually added? You know, I have gotten down on my knees this year begging them to fix this, but our systems department has some other priorities right now. So it should be added next year, but right now you do need to still manually update it if you want it to show something. Right now the system automatically leaves that blank. And it's not a problem. It's not going to cause you not to be able to file. But if you want it to reflect the actual reason, then you would need to go in and manually update it. Next question, for example, if an employee was 2F from 1/1 to 7/31 and leaves on 8/10, would it be 2F or August of 2B? Well, let me just see. I'm not sure. You would not need to use that month. You would use 2B. I'm sorry. In August, after they leave on 7/31, they left at the end of the month. If they left on August the 10th, August would be 2B. Okay, another question. When you gave the example on how to calculate affordability based on the rate of pay, you multiplied the lowest pay rate by 130. That's a 30-hour work week. What if our employees actually work 40 hours per week? If you're using the rate of pay, you still multiply it by 130. That's why you do get shortchanged. That's why I recommend that you use the W-4. You said don't fill out ACA coverage if the employee is part-time, but why is there a part-time option in Payentry on the status tab? There is there because it tells the system that that person is part-time and doesn't get a 1095C. It eliminates them from the process. If you left it blank, the system wouldn't know that they were part-time or not eligible. It needs you to tell it whether they're full-time or part-time. And next year, it will be a priority. They've told me to fix a few things that I want to fix. Does the ACA reporting work for a company where premiums are set by age? So therefore, an employee-only coverage amount could be different from one employee to the other. You really have to look at your lowest paid person to see if their coverage is affordable to them. So it is on an individual basis. Just look at the person who makes the least and look at what premium they're paying. If it's not affordable, if it's above that amount that we talked about, the 9.83%, then your plan's not affordable. For the employee share, are we entering the monthly deduction? Yes, you are. The monthly deduction for the employee, what they would pay to have employee-only coverage. Here's one with a company that's a seasonal company of many individuals who are considered seasonal. Do I not put them in? Yes, you do. Um, if they are seasonal, you would not be offering them health insurance. And but if you mark them seasonal, you would not be required to. Unless you're working them, I think, Ashley, I probably should reach out and talk to you because it depends on how long they're seasonal. They're seasonal, sometimes in a situation like that, if they're working for you longer than the waiting period, that can be a problem. So I will reach out to you after this session is over. If an employee ends employment within the month and benefits terminate at the end of the month, what code is used? You use the same code that you would for them having coverage, which would be 2C, because they had coverage the whole month. Okay, well, that looks like the questions we had today. After this, if you've go through your handout, see if you have any other questions. Please reach out to me. My email is cgraham@payentry.com, and I'm happy to help. I want to help you before we get to year end. So if you have time to work on this now or have someone work on it, please do. It is very important to make sure that your data is correct, because if it's not correct and it doesn't get corrected by you, then the your 1095 report will not run correctly, and we won't be able to file. And it's critical for you to be able to file because the IRS is really doing more audits than I've seen in the past, and they are catching up. They were auditing 2018 and 2019 on a couple of the letters that I've seen. So make sure that you get this in and get it right, so you don't get any letters. And please use me. If you want someone to do this for you, I am available on a project basis through the HR services route, and I'd be happy to send you a quote on what it would take to bring your files up to date. So any way I can help, let me know. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate your time, and I hope this was helpful. There will be a survey after this. If you could just let me know if you need help, there's a place for you to put that information. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and that all this soaks in and never goes away. So but it does. It does. I lose the first 6 months of the year, and then I have to pick it back up. So let me know if I can help. I'm here.